What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily, and in this video, we are checking out the new OnePlus Nord N30. Now, it's no secret that here in the US, OnePlus isn't exactly a top-selling brand. However, while their high-end flagship phones aren't too popular, their mid-range and budget devices, their Nord series, like this one, are, and for good reason. In the sub-$500 category of smartphones, OnePlus's various Nord devices over the last few years have been way better than the likes of Motorola and plenty competitive against Samsung's A series. And this new Nord N30 once again seems to offer a lot for the price. So I'm going to fill you in on everything you need to know about the new Nord N30 here, but first things first, let's just quickly unbox it so I can show you what all comes included when you buy one. Slicing into the stickers and sliding off the lid, the first thing you get is a big packet of stuff. Inside you'll find a couple of interesting things. The SIM ejector tool is attached to this nice congratulatory card thanking you for your purchase, which is kind of nice. You also get a membership card to the Red Cable Club, an ode to OnePlus's famous bright red charging cables. Underneath all that stuff is the phone itself, and last but not least, OnePlus still does include both a charging brick and their iconic charging cable like I mentioned. Now it is a USB-A wall plug and a USB-A to USB-C cable, but the phone supports up to 50 watt wired charging, and the charging accessories are at least still included. So I have no real complaints. With all the accessories and extras out of the way, here is the phone itself, of course. It comes in any color you'd like, as long as that color is chromatic gray. Very glossy, it'll be covered in fingerprints as soon as you touch it. And as far as pricing and availability, the new Nord N30 retails for $299 unlocked direct from OnePlus and from places like Amazon. Here in the US, it's also compatible with and sold through a number of major carriers and prepaid networks. T-Mobile, for example, has it for $0 per month with a new line, or $264 paid in full. Switching to Metro will get you this phone for $90, so plenty of opportunities to snag a good deal. All in all though, the N30 shouldn't be more than $300 total anywhere. And if you want to do some comparison shopping of your own, I'll leave some links down below in the video description to where you can get this phone at its cheapest current price. For that $300 price, you get a phone that's actually quite large. The Nord N30 is a 6.72-inch smartphone, precisely. That's the screen size corner to corner, and it's actually got a relatively decent 87% screen-to-body ratio, with a center hole punch selfie camera, super slim side bezels, and slightly more noticeable bottom chin. There is a screen protector already installed on the phone, by the way, so that's quite nice. And in the hand, the N30 is definitely a tall phone with that elongated 20:9 aspect ratio, so it's going to require some maneuvering and stretching to reach, especially the top edge with one hand. But if you're used to big phones already, you'll be fine with this one. Around back, the incredibly glossy chromatic finish, while it does look nice, is still all plastic. You can certainly tell when you touch it. It's a very flat phone. Its profile is squared off, no curves, no sloping edges. The frame is technically plastic as well, but it feels pretty sturdy. And those two big camera bumps do actually stick out the back quite a bit. There's no IP rating as far as I'm aware, so the phone isn't water resistant, no wireless charging either, but none of that should come as any surprise since this is very much still a budget phone with a very budget build. Taking a look around, on the left side is where you'll find the volume buttons, and OnePlus also made it a point to highlight the SD card support this phone still has, which is great. There's only one storage option, 128 gigabytes, and actually this phone ships with quite a few more pre-installed apps and bloatware than I've previously seen from OnePlus, most of which you can delete, but it's still nice to have the option to pop in an SD card if you want. On the right side, you'll find the power button / fingerprint sensor. The unlocking speeds and accuracy with the fingerprint sensor to me seem totally fine. Setup was smooth, and I don't really notice any immediate issues. It's a fast and solid fingerprint sensor, which should just be the norm at this point anyway. At the bottom, OnePlus also kept the headphone jack, which is great. There's the USB-C port in the middle, and main speaker right next to it. There's a secondary speaker hidden within the earpiece slit at the top, just above the selfie camera, and around back, like I already mentioned, a couple camera bumps that actually hide 3 different camera lenses inside, which I'll talk more about in just a minute. The big old nearly 6 3/4 6.75-inch display is a pretty good looking 2400 by 1080 resolution IPS LCD panel with the option to enable a 120Hz high refresh rate. Now, it seems like with these budget or mid-range phones, the display always just has one compromise. In this case, the screen is plenty sharp. 1080 resolution is a must-have for something this big. You get a pixel density of around 391 pixels per inch, so no issues there. The 120Hz refresh rate actually is comparable to the flagships. You don't even get that on like the Pixel 7a, for example, which is a couple $100 more than this phone. And it gives you that really fast and ultra-responsive feel with all your taps and swipes. The compromise here is obviously LCD. This phone isn't really as bold or as bright as it could be with an OLED display, so that's kind of a bummer, but that's not unheard of on a phone like this. For $300, there's going to be something missing, and actually, it's still a relatively colorful display for what it is. It's just not very bright. All in all, though, it's an expected compromise, and not exactly a deal breaker, so to speak, but comparatively, if you want a better display for a similar price, Samsung's A34 would be your answer there. 120Hz, Super AMOLED, 1080 resolution, and 1000 nits of brightness. This display on the Nord is fine, but it's nothing too special. The speaker setup on the Nord, though, I think is really pretty good. You get dual speakers, like I mentioned, for sort of a stereo sound experience, the main big one at the bottom and a relatively decent secondary one up top. The sound gets super loud and there's not much distortion at all. I'm always going to call out a great speaker setup when I see one, and this one is something solid for sure. So inside, the Nord N30 is powered by what I consider to be a mixed bag of specs. On the one hand, you get a Snapdragon processor inside, but it's a pretty old Snapdragon processor. It's the 695 5G, which technically came out in October of 2021. That's paired with 8 GB of RAM and 128 GB of built-in storage. Now, here are the Geekbench scores for those of you who like to compare numbers. It's not all bad news, but let me just offer some thoughts here. On the one hand, plopping in a processor from almost 3 years ago is sort of a bad look. It's like a part spin special. There are great new mid-tier processors that may have been better, but they may not have been from Qualcomm. And they may have increased the price of this phone too, neither of which I think most people would have wanted. This phone gets a tried and true mid-tier processor that, yes, is older, but is still pretty good. And to me, this phone feels fast and fluid enough to not really show any issues with performance. I personally think OnePlus does a really great job with their own Android flair. Oxygen OS 13.1 over Android 13 looks great. You don't have to fight through any gimmicky add-ons. The pre-installed junk can be uninstalled. It's minimal, it's responsive, it's straightforward, and I've personally felt like OnePlus's software experience is a plus. Yeah, you'll need to keep in mind that this phone is a $300 phone, so again, there are going to be some compromises. The older processor is a compromise, but I don't think it's a net negative, and I actually think a lot of people will be okay with this versus a potentially newer but less powerful processor, or newer, more powerful chip that makes the phone $50 or $100 more expensive. But let me know what you guys think about this move. I sort of feel like we're going to see a lot of budget and mid-tier phones getting the older chipsets nowadays anyway, since it sort of makes sense. Processors from the last few years, especially the higher tier ones, aren't that much more powerful year over year anyway, so they may as well just keep using some of the older, better ones. When it comes to the battery, it should be no surprise that this phone is powered by a big one, 5,000 milliamps. What's also great, like I mentioned at the start, is that you can charge at up to 50-watt wired speeds. That's faster than anything Samsung offers for the A series. It's a million times better than Motorola. It's something that OnePlus continues to focus on, while other brands do not, which doesn't make much sense because less time plugged in is always a positive. The negative here is that there's no wireless charging, but that's again not out of the ordinary for a phone at this price point. Last but not least, the optical illusion that is the dual lens camera around back is actually a triple lens setup, sort of. You can see one lens in one circle and two lenses in the other. What we have here is a wild 108 megapixel f1.7 aperture main lens, which is a great start. And then things sort of just fall apart with a 2 megapixel macro lens for up close pics and a 2 megapixel depth sensor for help with portrait shots. Neither of which, in my opinion, even needs to be on this phone nowadays. I'd swap them both out for a decent wide angle, but that's just me. The selfie camera is a respectable 16 megapixel shooter, and inside the camera app, while there's a lot to do, the useful capabilities are a bit limited. For example, no wide angle, obviously, and no real zoom either, just 6x digital. There's portrait, night mode, pro controls, the extra HD megapixel mode to utilize the full 108 megapixel lens, and some other minorly helpful things. But I would say this camera setup overall is a bit less than some similar $300 to $400 phones would offer for sure, and much, much further away from any flagship that would today be the standard. There's also like no 4K video, for example, not even 1080/60. And while the couple sample pics I did take looked all right, the color between all of them, like the selfie and the rear lens and the portrait and regular shots, are all different, which is odd. And there's actually not a ton of detail when shooting just the regular modes. It's not terrible, but I don't know if this is the phone I'd get if pictures were very important to me. While the 108 megapixel lens seems like it might be good, the camera capabilities as a whole feel like they're lacking a bit compared to the competition. All in all, I do think this new OnePlus Nord N30 has a lot to offer. For under $300, it is one of the best phones available for US customers who want an affordable 5G device. Take this phone over any Motorola Moto device for sure. You get great specs, a bigger battery, super fast charging, decent screen, and okay camera with the little things like an SD card slot and a headphone jack that I think a lot of people will appreciate. However, if you have the opportunity, I still think something like the Samsung A34 is a bit better for a similar price. But what do you guys think about the new Nord N30? Are you thinking about buying one? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.